Rev up your engines!
Well, Nissan's back in the news, and as usual, it's over crappily built cars now suing over turbo engines that suddenly die, even though supposedly they've been fixed. And what is it? It is Nissan's VC turbo engine. VC stands for variable compression. Nissan came up with this supposedly brilliant idea of having engines that have variable compression ratios. Instead of having a piston on a piston rod that's connected to the crankshaft, that's one piece, goes up and down. The piston rod now has cantilevers, various moving parts, so the piston can go this high or higher or lower to change the compression ratio in the engine, making it supposedly a more efficient and powerful engine. It could have high compression when it wanted a lot of power, lower compression so that it got better gas mileage, had less friction in it, right? And I said, as soon as they came up with this, I said, what a stupid idea they're going to break. Well, guess what? They're breaking all the time, right? The new lawsuit says these variable compression engines are hesitating, making high-pitched noises, idle roughly, stall, lose power, or even shut down when they're driving down the road. Now, they say it suffers from main bearing malfunctions and other issues. And they say Nissan knew about it and they sold them anyways, because of course they pushed them into production. Now, the thing was, not only is it a mechanical failure, right, but it's actually almost a complete failure, because they said, well, we get power and better gas mileage with these engines. So they come out with the engines, and then they find out that the thing's got like 3 or 4% at best better gas mileage, which is almost nothing for all this complexity that now the engines are breaking down on them. And get this, one guy, his is going out. So what did Nissan doing? This guy named Becker says, they replaced my battery in my Rogue with variable compression. That didn't fix it. So then they updated the engine control module, and that didn't fix it. The check engine light came on, and they replaced the exhaust gas recirculation valve, and that didn't fix it either, because of course it's not going to fix an underlying bad design. They can try to put software into it to try to make the design last a little bit longer. They do stuff like, well, if it revs so high, let's make it so it revs lower before it shifts gears, right? There's a lot of tricks they can do, but the underlying problem in this case is the stupid engine design. It's a bad design. They don't build them right. They're having problems. And, of course, they're trying to deny the whole thing because they are Nissan. The recent recall they had, their repair is, quote, it amounts to simply a few oil changes. Yeah, change the oil, put a heavy oil. That does not fix the underlying problem. It just shows Nissan is a problem company. They came up with a very stupid idea, variable compression. People tried that years ago and it failed. Why? They thought they could do it, right? And now people that have bought these things, and there are hundreds of thousands of them out there, are stuck with a bad engine that Nissan is fighting tooth and nail, not having to replace the things. Well, Honda's now being investigated by NHTSA over 1.4 million Honda and Acura vehicles that have engine failure. And yes, it is connecting rod failures in their 3.5-liter V6 engines. And of course, it can be complete engine failure, crashes, fires. Now, this is a lot of their vehicles, okay? The 3.5 V6s that are in 2016 to 2020 Acura MDX, 2018 to 20 Acura TLX, 2016 to 20 Honda Pilot, 2017 to 19 Honda Ridgeline, and the 2018 to 2020 Honda Odyssey. And they all have that 3.5-liter V6 engine. Honda's quality has gone down. They used to make totally dependable cars. And the interesting thing is, this investigation is seen as a separate one from the 2023 recall for connecting rod failure that included many of these vehicles. Thing is, they're not actually fixing a lot of them. Oh, you bring it in and we'll look at it and we'll listen. Like they'll put a heavier weight oil in it. That doesn't fix an underlying problem that these connecting rods are weak. Yeah, they're down on the bottom, the bearings, right? And if you put heavier oil, then it makes a thicker gap. So if they're worn, they won't wear as bad and they won't rattle around, but they're still already worn. It's too late, right? Once an engine's worn internally, the only way to fix it is by taking it apart and rebuilding it or replacing it, right? So the document that NHTSA's looking at showed that there were 414 incidents, including 4 crashes and fires, as well as 2,598 manufacturer reports of people complaining about it when they took it to the dealer. So, before one, the original recall didn't do much for a lot of people. I had customers take them in and they, oh no, there's nothing wrong with yours. As I explained, the only way they can tell if your connecting rod bearings are bad is by taking the engine apart, taking it apart, measuring the clearance, physically taking it apart. They're not going to do that, and they didn't do that. They just, well, if it was going, they'd have to fix it because it was really noisy. But if it wasn't that far gone, didn't make any noise, they'd just tell you, put a heavier oil in it. That is not a fix, and I think it's great that they're investigating it again. Well, it looks like the Nissan Xterra is coming back. Now, a lot of people like the Xterras. It went from 2000 to 2015, then they canned it. And now, Nissan's talking about bringing it back as an electric vehicle. Now, it's kind of interesting because Nissan's already canceled a planned EV battery plant they had in Japan. They canceled that. And now they're saying, well, the Xterra may be late 2028. So don't hold your breath waiting for an electric Nissan Xterra. Because, hey, one, that's 3 years from now, and who knows if they'll actually even build the thing. They canceled the original one, which, you know, basically when you looked at it, the Xterra and the Pathfinder, they were pretty similar vehicles. There's no sense making two relatively similar vehicles. So maybe you're watching this video and it's 2028 now. Let's see, did they actually make the Xterra as an electric vehicle, or was it just another pipe dream of electrification that never came to fruition? Only time will tell. Well, you know, they're making all this car tech. Some of it's great, some of it stinks. Now, the one big hit for most people is driver assistance, especially the side mirrors, where when someone's passing you on the left or the right, you got that little warning that lights out and flashes and shows you that there's a car in your blind spot coming through. Most people like that. Now, I do have to say, I have some elderly customers that hate it because it's always buzzing and it confuses them and they're looking around, what's that, what's that? But for most drivers, it is a very handy feature because it's warning you somebody's in your blind spot, left or right, the light's on, and then you're immediately going to see that light on if it either flashes or buzzes, and you'll look closer and you'll see a car's coming by. That's a feature that most people like, and I agree with that. Blind spots getting larger in cars because a lot of these SUVs do have quite a few blind spots with the posts in the way, and they go more for style than seeing. They got a lot of areas you can't actually see that well, and these blind spot monitors work quite well for that. Now, a lot of people also like the smart climate control systems where you can set the climate control. Now, originally, they were garbage. You go back decades ago, I had customers with them, and I'd have to work on them all the time because they were always breaking. They're supposed to be one temperature there. Heck, the difference between you either getting air conditioning blowing in your face or heat, depending on the temperature put, it could be as little as 1 degree. So when you want to cool down, it's actually throwing some heat at you, or you want heat, it's throwing AC. They are much better than they used to be. They're not as bad as they would. But people are also complaining that the car wash modes that they have to set it to a car wash mode, that doesn't work that good. And the biometric authentication of it's looking at your face, is it you? Those things don't work that good. These driver monitoring systems aren't that great because they have to have connectivity. They got to go to the cloud in order to analyze a bunch of stuff. They don't work right all the time, and I agree entirely. These direct monitoring systems, they aren't all that great. Now, some of them work, some of them don't, and of course, if you're somewhat older and you're used to having knobs to go, hey, you like the knob. You know the knobs that you push it up, you don't have to look at it, right? If you have to look at a touch screen in order to turn your headlights on or in order to make the AC go up or down, that's a real hassle. You know, people like the steering wheel controls that are analog, but even with Volkswagen, some of their digital ones are going back to analog because people found out that the digital ones, sometimes just their hand going over it would turn the cruise control on when they didn't want to because it wasn't an actual button, but it was a digital button and it was just going by the feel of your hand going by and the electricity. So, yeah, some of them are good and some of them really stink. Now, people are always talking about, oh, we got to make electric cars more affordable. Well, the Chinese have already figured that out. Huawei has their most affordable SUV called the H5, and it starts at $23,600. And if you look at the picture, it's a decent-sized SUV. right? Compact SUVs here is a big vehicle in China, but for us, at that price, if they can make these things and sell them for $23,600, yeah, there's no hope for the American car market making electric vehicles in that price range that are that big, that look like that have that kind of range. I mean, that's just, you're not going to be able to compete with the Chinese. They've been building these electric cars for a while. They're pretty much perfected them, and they weren't morons. They didn't start like Tesla making big, expensive, super expensive vehicles only rich people can afford. They make a lot of small ones, and this isn't small. To them, it's a relatively big vehicle, but the only thing that would stop them from taking over the United States would be tariffs, because there's no way the American manufacturers could ever match a vehicle like that for that price range. The electric vehicles that they're selling, they're at least $15,000 more than that. And I mean, when you consider that's $23,500 on the others are $15,000 or more, it's a lot more percentage-wise, right? And it's not like these are little dinky cars. These don't look much different than some of the Audi SUVs. They make a hybrid version. A hybrid range of the electricity, it can go for 235 kilometers and a combined range of 1,360 kilometers. So the combined range is like 700 miles. No range anxiety there. Chinese aren't stupid either. They realize that there's a market for hybrids. There's a big market for hybrids, and that's, if they had brains, they'd extend that to other countries that aren't that big on full electric cars, that aren't communist countries where they can force people to drive electric cars by just shutting all the gas stations down if they want to, right? So watch out. The Chinese are miles ahead when it comes to electrification of vehicles and price when you combine the two. Well, now the shoe's on the other foot, and I'm laughing my rear end off. Solar executives are warning that Trump's attack on the renewables will lead to spikes of electricity prices, right? Now, my place in Rhode Island, my electric bill almost doubled because they had to pay for those windmills. And now it looks like they're not even going to finish building the windmills, with Trump saying we're not going to subsidize these with government money, right? But the prices went up to pay for making these stupid windmills out in the ocean, right? Just like the solar, expensive stuff. And now they're saying, oh, you can't stop us, their energy prices are going up. They were one of the prime drivers in energy prices going up. The stuff is expensive. You have to pay for it. And that's now. We all know that they're not going to last as long as they say they're going to last. For instance, they had one where I am in Portsmouth. And they say, oh, yeah, 15 to 20-year lifespan. This wasn't even offshore. This was on the land. Within like 5-6 years of it being made, it broke. Then they had to spend a ton fixing it. And then it broke again. And now it sits there and it's not even working because the Canadian company that made it is bankrupt. So anybody that thinks they're going to last as long as they say they are, they're nuts about that. That's a complete waste of money. It's sitting there now doing nothing as an eyesore. It doesn't even spin. Costs so much money to take it down. They just left it there. And now these same people are complaining that, oh, it's going to raise the price of electricity for the consumers. They didn't give one rat's behind about that price before. But now that the government's cutting their little gravy train of money paid for by us taxpayers to build the stupid things, now they're saying, oh, it's going to raise the price. The very fact that they were building and where I am, where they were raising the electric price to pay for this stuff, shows these people hypocrites on earth. Now they're saying it's going to cost you more money because the government isn't subsidizing us. Hey, it's a double whammy. The government, our taxpayer money is paying to build the things, and then they raise the rates, so then we pay even extra to pay for more expensive electricity. It's total insanity. They've now approved gas-powered plants, electric generating plants, in Meta's $10 billion data center in Louisiana, but everybody's not happy. They wanted green stuff, right? And if people don't understand, natural gas power plants, they've been using them for years. They're relatively efficient for what they do. They don't cost a big fortune to make, and they're readily available technology. Even at that they're readily available, they can make them. These power plants that are approved, they're not going to go online between 2028 to 2029. So, 3 and 4 years from now, this is technology that's already there. Everybody knows these gas turbine plants work. But it's going to take all those years to get on. Well, some of the Louisiana people are mad. They want it to be clean energy because they want to use renewable power. And one group, it's an industry group, they said they're concerned that this Meta and Entergy, the companies using the gas turbines will get special treatment. This industry-affiliated group was formed by Dow Chemical, Chevron, ExxonMobil, because they're trying to get renewable energy because the government was all backing it. Now they're not backing it, so they're mad about that, right? Here's what they're saying. They're saying, well, we have concern that the ratepayers will take the cost after the contract of 15 years is up. Yeah, like they care about what ratepayers. These are big corporations just mad because they're not going to be getting the moolah for the supposedly green stuff that they had put some of their money into, and these other companies come in and say, we're just going to use natural gas like we have for years, right? And then they say, these natural gas generators will make the company's 2030 net zero pledge harder to achieve. Come on, we're not going to have net zero in 5 years. That's absurd, patently absurd. There's not enough wind and solar stuff to do it. They're not going to have this net zero. It's a bunch of nonsense, right? And then they'll probably continue this BS carbon credit. Well, we'll get a credit so we can do that for somebody who's growing trees or they're building Teslas. And so they'll sell their credits. Nonsense. I agree with Trump in that respect, too. This carbon credit stuff is a bunch of BS, right? So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.